Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey there!
So today we're looking at something pretty exciting, especially if you're a fan of a certain classic Capcom series. We've got details from a behind-closed-doors demo of the new Onimusha, Way of the Sword.
That's right. And our info comes straight from a single source this time, a YouTube video transcript from GameSpot. They got an early look.
Exactly. So our goal here is to really unpack what they saw, what makes this new Onimusha tick, and maybe get a feel for where the series is headed.
Right. Should be interesting.
Okay, let's dig in. Where did the demo start? Familiar territory.
Yeah, it seems like they grounded it in the familiar first, that basic Onimusha loop, kill enemies, see those different colored souls float out, and then using the gauntlet to suck them up for health or experience. That's all there. Felt very much like classic Onimusha in that respect.
Okay, good. That soul-absorbing thing is pretty core to Onimusha, isn't it? Glad that's intact.
Yes.
But the title, Way of the Sword, strongly suggests something's changed, right? The source seemed to emphasize a big evolution in the combat.
Oh, absolutely. This is clearly where the game is aiming to innovate. There's a really heavy focus on the actual sword combat, much more than the older games.
So more complex, like parries and special moves, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Parrying was mentioned specifically as being really central. The source even drew a comparison to Sekiro, which, sets a high bar.
Oh, okay. High bar indeed.
Yeah, but they noted it felt maybe a bit slower. A little more forgiving than Sekiro, perhaps, sort of landing in a middle ground, maybe?
A middle ground could be good. Accessible, but deep. Did they mention how you handle, like, archers or ranged guys with this sword focus?
They did, yeah. Apparently you can actually parry arrow projectiles, like knock them right back at the enemy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that feels pretty new for Onimusha, I think.
Yeah.
The overall vibe from the source was that the systems looked nuanced, enough to be, and this is a quote, really, really engaging.
Okay, so the fighting itself sounds deeper. But I think the source mentioned another layer, too. Something about a meta strategy within the combat.
Yes. This sounded really interesting. So when you do enough posture damage, stagger an enemy, they go into this vulnerable state.
Right.
And at that point, you get a choice, a tactical decision about where you hit them next.
Okay, like aim for the head for a quick kill.
That's option one, yeah. Hit the head, do massive damage. The source said it could instantly kill most standard enemies, especially after, like, a special move or a dodge counter.
Makes sense. What's the alternative then?
Well, you could aim for another body part instead. Maybe an arm, for example.
Why would you do that if it does less damage?
Here's the clever bit. Hitting those other parts apparently makes the enemy drop a different set of souls when they die.
Different souls.
Yeah.
Like different resources.
Exactly. Maybe you don't need the instant kill as much as you need, say, more experienced souls right now.
Yeah.
Or, crucially, maybe you're low on health and hitting the arm yields more health souls.
Okay. So it's a trade-off. Immediate kill versus potentially getting resources you need more for the longer fight.
Precisely. It adds this constant little micro decision within the combat flow. Do I end it fast or do I play for resources? The source called it a really cool, interesting metagame.
It does sound cool. It integrates that core soul mechanic in a really smart way.
Yeah, seems like a natural evolution.
So who are we playing as while making these choices? Who's the hero?
It's Miyamoto Musashi. Obviously a huge figure in Japanese history and legend. The game apparently shows him in his early days.
Okay, Musashi. What's his personality like in this version?
Well, the source had described him as pretty egotistical, and interestingly, he's actively trying to get rid of the gauntlet. Like, he doesn't want it on his arm, wants to rely on his own skill.
Wait, really? He doesn't want the magic demon arm. That's different for Onimusha.
Yeah, a bit of a twist.
What about his look?
Capcom mentioned his design is based on the iconic actor Toshiro Mifune.
Oh, nice. Great choice.
Yeah, visually that sounds fantastic. Though the reviewer, the person watching the demo, did have one specific critique. A subjective one, mind you.
Oh, what was that?
The voice acting for Musashi, they used a cocky English accent, and the reviewer just felt it was strange. So they were not vibing with it for the character.
Huh. Accents can be tricky like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, the gauntlet's stuck on his arm. He hates it. And you said something about someone inside it.
Yeah, that was another detail. Apparently there's a disembodied lady inside of it.
Inside the gauntlet?
Yep.
Okay.
And she talks to Musashi, like back and forth banter. Seems like a key part of the story dynamic.
And the plot they showed in the demo itself was?
Pretty straightforward from the description. Mostly just Musashi trying to figure out how to ditch this talking gauntlet.
Was there a main bad guy shown?
There was a recurring villain named Ganu. He's described as another sword master with a gauntlet, setting up a rivalry.
Okay, a rival figure.
Yeah, and the reviewer made a comparison to Majima from the Yakuza series. You know, slightly unhinged, just wants to fight, loves blades, that kind of energy.
That sounds potentially fun, a chaotic enemy.
It does. Although, the reviewer also noted that Ganu also had a British accent.
Oh, really? Both of them?
Apparently so.
Right.
And because of that, the reviewer felt Ganu came across as not as threatening as, say, Majima. Maybe a bit less intimidating with that accent choice, in their view.
Interesting subjective take there. Okay, let's shift gears. How did the game actually look?
Visually.
Oh, it looked really, really cool according to the source. They were pretty confident it's running on the RE engine.
Makes sense given Capcom's recent output.
Yeah, exactly. And the level of detail was apparently very high. Musashi's model, his facial expressions, described as very dense in detail.
Nice. What about the environments? Big open spaces?
No, seems like the opposite, actually. Not vast environments. The description was more like very controlled camera angles and focused area environment.
Ah, okay. Like more linear, maybe. Kind of, yeah. They compared it explicitly to Resident Evil, another Capcom game that often uses more constrained spaces.
Right. And the benefit there is usually bitter detail.
Exactly. Lets them pack more visual fidelity into those focused areas rather than spreading it thin over a huge map. So controlled, but likely very polished looking.
Okay, that makes sense. Polished visuals, focused areas. How did you actually move through these areas in the demo? What was the progression like?
It seemed pretty guided. Started in a temple, moved through fights, faced bosses. Standard action game structure, really.
So mainly fighting your way forward.
Yeah, mostly combat-driven. And here's a really key point the source made. There weren't really complex puzzles.
Oh, gruel. That's a big change from old Onimusha, isn't it? Those games had definite survival horror roots with puzzles.
A huge change, yeah. Seems they're leaning away from that aspect.
So how do they block your path then, if not with puzzles?
The demo showed a mechanic using something called Genma vision, like a special sight mode. Using a special ability linked to that vision let you see, like a demon trail. You'd follow the trail to find a specific demon who was blocking the way, defeat it, and then you could proceed.
Gotcha. So find the key. But the key is a specific enemy you hunt down using a special vision. More action-focused gating.
Exactly. Much less about manipulating objects or solving riddles, more about targeted elimination.
Okay, so we've got the classic Soul stuff, but evolved combat. This interesting meta strategy with Soul types. Musashi being kind of arrogant and wanting the gauntlet off, polished visuals in tighter spaces, and a move away from puzzles towards action progression. Why? Why bring Onimusha back now, do you think? The series has been gone a while.
Well, the source touched on a couple of likely reasons. One is just Capcom's been on a roll, right?
True. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter.
Exactly. Their recent successes, especially with Resident Evil remakes and sequels, probably gave them the confidence and maybe the resources to tackle another classic IP like Onimusha.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Anything else?
The timing also feels right culturally, maybe. The source mentioned the recent resurgence in samurai and swordplay in games and other media.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of that lately. Ghost of Tsushima, Sekiro itself, Neo.
Right, so the audience interest seems high for this kind of setting and gameplay. Capcom's probably seeing an opportunity to jump back in.
So overall, the impression from this demo was pretty positive on the direction.
It definitely sounded that way. The takeaway was that Capcom is bringing Onimusha back with a little more style and a little more flair and a little more gameplay intricacy and nuance and satisfaction and mechanics. Building on the old, but really modernizing it.
Okay, so for you listening, what does this deep dive into this one specific demo transcript give you?
Well, basically, we've tried to boil down that firsthand account into the key takeaways. You should now have a pretty clear picture of like the core feel, that new strategic depth with the souls, the surprising take on Musashi, and how it looks and plays in terms of environment and progression.
Right. It gives you the essence of what Onimusha, Way of the Sword, seems to be aiming for, that focus on deeper sword fighting. The tactical choices, so you could quickly figure out if this is something that clicks with you, without having to sift through everything yourself.
Yeah, hopefully cutting through some of the noise.
Exactly. So we've seen those familiar roots, twisted into new strategies, much deeper combat, an interesting character setup, and polished, focused visuals. I think it sounds like a potent mix.
It really does. Potential for something special, maybe.
So as a final thought, something for you to consider based on all this. How critical do you think that meta strategy, choosing souls over immediate kills, will actually be to the game's lasting appeal? Will it just be a minor layer, or could it define the long-term depth?
Yeah, good question. And maybe also think about those subjective elements like the voice acting reaction. Even with strong gameplay and graphics, how much can something like a voice performance choice that the source specifically said didn't vibe right for them affect your own immersion and enjoyment of the whole package? It's interesting how all those pieces fit together, isn't it?